The first voiceover series I ever produced for this YouTube channel was my ranking every roller coaster at every park I'd been to with 5 or more coasters. This is a series I've stuck with over time because a lot of you guys seem to really enjoy it. However, I noticed the other day that I hadn't done one of these videos since November 2021. Obviously, the reason being is because I'm slowly ticking off all the major parks across the United States and even North America. So it was about time I traveled overseas to kick off the revitalization of an old beloved series. Having been back from my big European road trip for well over a month at this point, I think I'm now ready to rank every roller coaster at each park I've been to on the continent. This will later be followed by a ranking of my favorite roller coasters in each European country that I've ridden more than 5 coasters in as well. Now, what better way to get things started than by talking about Energylandia, an up-and-coming amusement park located in Zator, Poland. This huge mega park opened under a decade ago in 2014, yet has more roller coasters than any other park in Europe and will most likely be taking the worldwide record in the years to come. Currently, they boast 17 coasters for all ages and have 3 more under construction. Let me honorably mention those 3 which will be excluded from today's list. The smallest that will be soon opening will be a modern Vekoma Junior coaster, which is a fine ride on its own, but it's an odd addition to a park with several other Vekoma rides of similar sizes. That's a reoccurring theme you'll notice in Energylandia, as a shocking amount of their roller coasters are quite obsolete in the grand scheme of things. The next coaster worth mentioning is their soon-to-open Vekoma Mine Train. This €10 million investment will feature 3 lift hills and will be a modern take on the old mine train designed by Aerodynamics. Having ridden similar Vekoma mine trains in Europe like Colorado Adventure at Phantasialand and Calamity Mine at Wallaby, Belgium, I have high hopes that this will be one of the park's better family coasters. Last but certainly not least is the park's 20th roller coaster, scheduled to open sometime in 2023. This will be a modern Vekoma tilt coaster, similar to the recently announced Circuit Breaker at Codaland in Austin, Texas. This will be an incredible addition, combining elements like a twisted vertical drop, upward 0G roll, triple down, and much more. I highly anticipate that this tilt coaster will be the park's 3rd best coaster when it opens. Now, with these caveats out of the way, I'd like to introduce my current list of every Energylandia roller coaster ranked from worst to best. Starting things off at number 17 is Viking Roller Coaster. Yes, that's the name of the ride. Now, I hate to start my list so negatively, but I honestly think that this is one of the worst roller coasters I've ever ridden. Manufactured by SBF Visa, already not a good start, this spinning wild mouse has some of the bulkiest restraints and profiling I've ever seen before. Oddly enough, the second half that allows the car to spin freely is much less painful than the non-spinning half, making up the upper switchbacks of the ride. The best way to improve this ride for me would be unlock the cars and allow them to spin throughout the entire ride, not just the second half. Also, get rid of those awful over-the-shoulder restraints while you're at it. Number 16 is quite possibly one of the smallest coasters I've ever ridden. Circus Coaster is also manufactured by SBF Visa, but it doesn't go fast enough to be painful, which is why I ranked it higher than the Viking coaster. This is a simple oval-shaped layout powered entirely by electricity. Some may not even consider it a roller coaster because at no point in the layout does gravity seem to take over. Whatever the case, Circuit Coaster is going to be best for the youngest of clientele at Energylandia. At number 15 is Happy Loops, an SBF 3-loop spinning coaster model. The 2-loop equivalent of this ride model is common at all sorts of parks around the world. However, I'd never seen one with 3 helixes, which made the coaster a little bit more interesting. That said, being interesting doesn't always mean better. It's still equally as janky and equally as boring as all the other SBF spinners I've ridden. I noticed that the crew likes to run long cycles on Happy Loops, which is a good thing when it comes to most other rides, but not this one. After a couple laps around the layout, I was ready for it to be over. Number 14 on our list is Frutti Loop Coaster. Man, are these some bad names. This is a standard Wacky Worm kiddie coaster, which is rather boring, but at least is smoother than the past few rides on this list. I will say, it's kind of unusual to see a Wacky Worm at a park as large as Energylandia. Usually these are reserved for the smallest of parks, including the nearby Zatorland just a couple miles away. Up next at number 13 is Draken, a Preston and Barbary family coaster. This short layout may not do a whole lot, but it's definitely the most eventful to make this list so far. For a coaster meant for a younger audience, there's nothing inherently wrong with this ride. It's just a shame that Energylandia has so many other kiddie coasters that make rides like Draken completely insignificant. What is definitely the most well-themed of the smaller coasters in this list so far is Mars. This ride has some cool alien figures and extraterrestrial rockwork around the layout. The actual ride has some slight laterals as well and is longer than it appears off-ride. I assure you we're finally getting somewhere with this list. Number 11 is Energus, a Vekoma family coaster model. model, particularly the 335-meter layout. This is the exact same layout as Woodstock Express at Cedar Point and Flight of the Hippogriff at the Universal Orlando Resort, so rather popular rides. What this tells you is that the coaster model really caught on, and that's for a relatively good reason. Looking at it at an individual basis, Energus definitely has a fun, windy layout that pulls some minor positive G-forces. If you were to remove the past 6 coasters on this list, Energus is the first coaster here that really does serve some type of purpose in this park. Breaking the top 10 is the modern equivalent of the last ride on this list, Frida. Frida is also a Vekoma family coaster, but this one opened in 2019 and uses the manufacturer's newer track style. This makes for a smoother, zippier, and better overall ride. I also really enjoy the purple color scheme, as that's a rather unique appearance for this coaster. Number 9 is Boomerang. No, not that Boomerang. This is one of 2 family Boomerang models in this park. This one is older than the other one, opening still quite recently in 2017 though. The track style it uses is sort of that middle ground between the older track and newer track styles that Vekoma uses on its rides of this size. In terms of layout, these family Boomerangs are always really fun with their forwards-backwards opportunity, and this one does happen to have some pretty good theming. At last, our first adult coaster makes our number 8 spot, and that would be Speed. This is a huge Intamin water coaster that opened alongside Hyperion in the 2018 season. Now, I had never experienced a water coaster by Intamin before, so I was pretty curious as to how they would ride, but unfortunately, and I hate to continuously be the bearer of bad news, but this is a flawed water coaster. The first drop is listed at a 45-degree angle, which is really pathetic, the entire layout is pretty shaky, and the final landing into the pool of water is rough and jarring. On the bright side, I did enjoy the unique elevator lift technology, especially because it lightly tilts you on the way up, which adds some adrenaline to the ride. Of course, I also do enjoy the fact that it's a refreshing water ride, mostly due to the fact that it reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit on our first day at the park. But other than those two things, Speed is a lackluster ride and not nearly as good as I was hoping. That's why I've decided to put Light Explorers a spot higher, despite the fact that it's a whole heck of a lot smaller. This is the second Vekoma family Boomerang I was referring to in this park, but having opened in 2021, this one uses the newer and smoother track style the manufacturer has to offer. Combined with the fact that this layout was built above water, Light Explorers is actually a very good family coaster. It's one that I actually decided to ride more than once, and in my defense, it was my first family Boomerang by Vekoma, so it was a completely new ride experience for me. Number 6 is our first of 2 inverted coasters at Energylandia, this one being the smaller family invert model by Vekoma. For those of you who have ridden Dragonflyer at Dollywood, this is the exact same ride. Dragon is a terrific family coaster, combining swooping turns and unique transitions on a ride just 63 feet tall. It's a great introduction to coasters that hang underneath the track and is an especially nice warm-up for our number 5 spot on this list. Number 5 is Roller Coaster Mayan, a Vekoma SLC, so I know what you're thinking, how is this ranked so high on this list? Most SLCs are known for being rough, shaky, and uncomfortable ride experiences. This SLC, however, is different from many others. Roller Coaster Mayan opened in 2015 and uses Vekoma's vest restraints, eliminating all headbanging and offering a smoother ride experience in totality. There are still some track imperfections in the layout, but it's easier to enjoy the intensity of this layout when you aren't getting your head banged around. Mayan is a genuinely good coaster, and it's not one enthusiasts should be afraid to ride. That said, there's 4 coasters in this park considerably better than anything else we've talked about so far. Number 4 is Formula. This Vekoma Space Warp opened in 2016 and was the first time we were introduced to the manufacturer's next generation thrill rides. Formula felt a lot like a preview for bigger Vekoma coasters that would debut in the years coming, but I have to say, if this was the prototype, they freaking nailed it. My main gripe with this ride is that it's a very short ride experience, but for what it packs in, this thing is fantastic. A great launch, fun inversions, solid airtime, and good overall pacing. Not to mention, it's incredibly smooth, which was unheard of for a Vekoma coaster at the time. Formula's big brother takes the number 3 spot, Abyssus. This underrated coaster rides awfully similar to Formula, but on a much larger scale. It feels like the layout goes on forever, in absolute contrast to Formula, and the ride is quite a bit taller and faster. I would also argue that it's more intense, as there are some grayouts that you're faced with throughout the layout that take a lot out of you. Now, aside from these occasional moments, however, Abyssus does feel very graceful and is just so enjoyable. Plenty of airtime, fun inversions, great transitions, and a very smooth coaster. This is an excellent 3rd place coaster for Energylandia, and I think it deserves much more praise than it gets in the coaster community. Taking the number 2 spot on our list is Hyperion, an Intamin mega coaster from 2018. This ride and its layout are absolutely outstanding and accumulates a top 25 overall coaster for me. At 269 feet tall and 88 miles per hour, this thing is a monster. Hyperion might have one of the most diverse layouts on any hypercoaster I've seen, with an out and back first half and twister second half. The airtime is absolutely astounding, the stangle dives and dive loop is very unique, and the low to the ground elements are the cherry on top. The execution of Hyperion was impeccable and well up to the standards I expect from Intamin. But number one on this list, and the best reason to come to Energylandia, is for Zadra. Rocky Mountain Construction nails it once again, and I truly believe Zadra is their finest work so far. This is a top 3 overall coaster for me, and when I first wrote it, I thought it had a case for number 1. So what makes Zadra so good in the first place? Well, I think Zadra has to be one of the best paced coasters out there in the world. At no point do you slow down, and when you hit the brakes, you slam forwards because of all the speed you still have. Secondly, flawless layout. No element on this coaster feels wasted, something I can't say about most other coasters, including many in my top 10. Third, the theming and presentation is off the charts. Energylandia went above and beyond to give this ride an imposing look, and even decked it out with a soundtrack and some of the coolest looking trains I've ever seen. Ultimately, what really does it for me is that Zadra has a little bit of everything. Lots of incredible ejector airtime, but also some fantastic inversions, ridiculously whippy transitions, wicked laterals, and again, there is just no time to breathe because the pacing is exceptional. Zadra is my definition of a perfect roller coaster and a worthy standout attraction for this legendary Polish amusement park. With that being said, let me know how you'd rank the coasters of Energylandia if you had the chance to visit. If not, I'd still like to know which of these rides you're most looking forward to riding someday. Leave it all in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, do me the favor of liking it and consider subscribing to the channel, as it really helps me out. Plus, there's many more countdown videos like this one coming in the future. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.